There are three primary methods for getting information into the system. The first is a manual input, and that is simply entering the data directly into the KReady system, one person at a time or one user at a time. So it could be a teacher or a student or administrator, but it's one person at a time. The bulk loader, however, is a second method, and it allows you to load multiple people at one time using various templates to do that. And we'll talk a little bit about those templates here in a bit. The third way to get information or data into the system is an automated way. And this uses two processes, one called the file watcher and the other called SFTP. And we'll drill down into those later on in the presentation, but we just want you to see that there's kind of see the overview of how we get information into the KReady system. So as you can see, there are three key ways that we get that information into the system. I mentioned earlier as it related to the bulk loader that it utilizes templates to get that information in. And so this is kind of a high level overview of what those templates are. There's a teacher template, and as you can see, the name implies that it's going to create teacher accounts in the KReady system. We also have a student template, likewise an enrollments template. The enrollments template allows the student and teachers to be matched up, if you will. It allows us to assign students to teachers. These three on the left are required in order to administer the system or to utilize the KReady system. You cannot track the students in the system. You cannot track the teachers in the system without loading the information into this information into the KReady system. The building administrator and the unenrollments, that's going to be utilized. Those templates are used as needed. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that. Carissa's going to go over some information, some details about how to utilize those templates later on in the live demo session. All of this information about the templates is available at the dataguidelines.kready.org site. There you can find videos and documents kind of outlining and detailing how to use those templates in the system. So we'll just kind of go over those templates and show you a little bit about what's important and what's critical to have when we're looking at these templates. So when we talk about the teacher templates, it's important to remember and to ensure that the teacher email is correct. This system identifies teachers not by the teacher ID that we use here in Ohio, but by the email. So it's critical that those email addresses are up to date and correct. You may have a teacher that may have had a name change throughout the course of the year, and it's important to update that information so that that's lined up in the KReady system as well. So what you see on the right, the arrow pointing to the right, kind of points to what you would see in the data guidelines document about that particular template. And then the arrow pointing down is just a snapshot of the header row, if you will, of that particular template, and kind of follow this process throughout as we look at all of the templates. So next is the student template. And here, the critical piece to ensure is that student ID. It's really important to make sure that while the district student ID is not necessarily needed for the student's information to be loaded into the system, the state student ID is required in order to add a student to the system. So we need to make sure that that information is up to date and correct as well. And then the last template here, kind of again, overview, well, not the last, actually, there's another one, but the enrollments template, as I mentioned before, provides a match. So it's critical that the data collection is correct. You see here it's circled in red, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the live demo when we're actually adding people into the system. There's a new data collection token for the spring window. So we want to make sure that you have that updated collection token as well. But it's critical that column A has the correct data token when you're doing the enrollments, when you're matching up the student and teacher enrollment. And then the last template is the administrator's template. And this allows you to add a building administrator to view reports in the system. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It's district ID, school ID, and their email. And so this is probably the simplest of all of the templates to use, but critical nonetheless if you want to have an administrator with access. And we would encourage you to just by default, go ahead and load all of your building administrators into the system so that they can have access to the system and you work with you to be able to view those reports in the system. As I mentioned, these templates are used to get information into the KReady system. These templates are in a CSV format, and so it's very important that the templates go in or upload it into the system correctly, and that the formatting is correct. So in order to make sure that that is the case, it's critical that you do not remove or change any of the headers when you download the templates and you're adding your information. You need to also format your cells for leading zeros. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the live demo. You'll see that happening. We also have some videos and resources if you are unsure of how to do that. But it's very critical that these cells, for instance, the district ID or school ID, they will strip away the zero. It's important, the leading zero, it's important that that is there in the CSV that you are uploading. Likewise, with the date of birth, the format needs to be month, month, day, day, and then 4 spaces for the year. So it would be, if it were this year, 2021. So it's really critical that the templates are formatted correctly. They use comma separated values, again, CSV, and that is why it's important that the system be able to read that correctly. The data guidelines document can walk you through some additional information with regards to formatting and provide you with some tips there as well. So I mentioned earlier that it might be such that a teacher's information might need to be updated. Let's say the teacher got married over Christmas break, the holiday break or something of that nature, and you need to update an email. So you can utilize the templates to update the email or manually rather in the system. So if a teacher's email address changes after an account is created, you must manually update the email address in the KReady system prior to using the bulk loader for any kind of automated process. So for instance, if a teacher, again, has a name change over, let's say, the winter break and it's now spring, and you need to update that information, you'll need to do that manually before, say, for instance, you run the new enrollments in the bulk loader so that there isn't an error or a mistake with the upload. Likewise, when loading students, you need to be sure that you're using the correct student ID to ensure that there's an accurate link of that student's data.